Daddy Squared, the Gay Dad podcast with Alex Megan and Jan Megan.
Welcome to Daddy Square, the Gay Dads podcast. This is it, Alex. It's the season finale.
Yeah.
Who would have believed that we'll end up this season in the middle of global pandemic, right?
Yes.
Seems like people are not talking about anything else these days.
Now,
We'll try to.
Well, because there's really nothing else to talk about except it's basically the global pandemic and cake. Those are literally the only two things to talk about.
Yeah, Alex and I think we're going to stop at one point to show pictures of ourselves now because we're becoming like bears.
No, I don't want anyone to see this.
And then we're going to shred, Alex. We're going to do the whole social media before and after thing.
That's great. I would like to have a permanent liposuction tap inserted into my love handles, and we can just keep removing whatever it is that I'm putting in. This is disgusting.
Oh my God. Our kids are also starting to show signs of crazy.
Oh, yes, because they weren't showing signs of crazy before the global pandemic.
In the house 24/7 together. Though we try to come up with fun stuff,
Yes.
the most challenging thing to me with them is to leave them some time to be bored. I think it's a rather interesting experiment for me. Personally.
Well, under normal circumstances, I completely agree with you that it is a really important thing to set aside time for our children to figure out their own kind of self-entertainment. The problem is that now there's no school, there's not much else for them to do, so don't worry, they're finding plenty of time to be bored.
Yes, but what they're doing while they're boring, that's the interesting experiment for the parent, not for the kids. Also for the kids, but you know. I want to give a tip for these days. Okay?
No.
My tip is, after the kids go to sleep, binge watch your favorite comedy with your lover.
Your lover. By the way, am his lover.
After the kids go to sleep, every day we watch Cougar Town, like binge watch.
It's true.
Seriously. And we love this show and we laugh together. And I think it's very, very important to laugh. Don't forget it. Don't be all over the news all the time.
Oh my God.
It's not
Listen,
healthy.
All right, that's my tip. My tip is, for God's sake, don't watch television news. Don't consume news via social networking either. You know what? Like, I read the newspaper every morning, but that's it. Once a day. Because guess what? These numbers of the number of people who have the virus, the number of people who have died, all of that kind of stuff, keeping track of that throughout the day achieves absolutely nothing for you except for driving you insane. Get away from it as fast as you can.
And one thing that you can do while doing nothing all day is download the Season 3 cheat sheet of Daddy Square at daddysqr.com. You know that every season, at the end of the season, we prepare some sort of a cheat sheet of topics we discussed, some exclusive materials and so forth. We have one for you waiting right now at daddysqr.com with some exclusive articles and resources that related to topic discussed during the season.
And that's true. And in addition to that, Jan last week already posted a list of great activities to do while you're shut away in isolation. Please check that out at daddysqr.com.
daddysqr.com.
Today we're talking about coming out after you had kids with a woman.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's more like people who have advanced in their lives to the point where they either got married or they to women. That's right. Sorry, and had children, and then after that, determined that they had to come out of the closet and change their lives, and
Yes.
It is a really amazing 2 interviews.
Yeah, we have 2 amazing stories from 2 brave men. I say that they're brave because not everyone will agree to expose their lives this way on national, global podcast.
Going on the podcast is brave, sure, but I don't actually think that's the brave part. I think what they did in their lives is brave just by itself.
Yes,
that's
true.
Because one thing that we don't do very often, we gay men who came out of the closet a long time ago and, blah, 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 is we don't realize how many people decide that they're going to do what these guys did, but they do it for the rest of their lives. I mean, we have so many people who in the world who who are, they're 30, they're 40, they're 50, they're 60, they're 80 years old, and they're still in the closet, and they've never gotten to live their lives the way they had wanted to. And this is the height of bravery, what these guys have done.
That's true. And it's also the further you go on that road of getting married to a woman, having kids, and deny all of these things, the harder it is for you to come out, I think. And you know what? So British TV host Philip Schofield came out a couple of months ago, and I think it raises up the whole discussion about closeted straight men.
Yeah.
Can I say it that way?
Closeted men living straight lifestyles. I mean, I don't think that, many of them, once they come out of the closet, will say, I was never straight.
Yes,
I was
that's
just...
true. Yeah. I think that sometimes we tend to forget all the struggle that goes along before coming out.
Yeah.
So
I have a very special place in my heart for people who are still in the closet and suffering. And, we have a tendency to really beat up a lot of these guys who, Schofield was always, pro-gay and very supportive and very, progressive and all that. But there are so many politicians and leaders who are anti-gay and homophobic, and they're in the closet themselves. And then when they come out of the closet, we beat them up. We're really angry at them. And you know what? I guess I give them a lot more latitude because I understand the pain that they must be enduring staying in the closet.
Yeah. We talk a lot about acceptance of gay dads on our show, but this is about self-acceptance more than about the acceptance of the society.
Yeah,
I think.
And the relationships that you had, especially with a wife or somebody like that beforehand.
All right. The first interview, the first story that we're going to hear is from Cade. He's from Oregon. Let's go to the interview. Not before Alex will lead us for the last time with our sponsors of the season.
Daddy Squared, the Gay Dads Podcast, Season 3, is sponsored by Love is Family by ORM Fertility, your gateway to fatherhood. Research begins at loveisfamily.com. And ORM, we want to thank you for being our sponsor this season.
Thank you, ORM. Cade, hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good. We want to talk to you a little bit about your story.
Oh, let's see.
That's a good sigh to start with.
Yeah, it's a story. Probably in 2005, 2006, that's when I had started dating men. I was still in school. I'm in a small community, so it made it really difficult because closed-mindedness. It's an old country town. Everybody's a cowboy, and so I had to keep it under wraps.
Right.
None of the relationships lasted. I opened myself up for being taken advantage of. So then, I kind of was like, well, if this is the way this is, I don't know if I want anything to do with it.
Right.
But back then I'm thinking, this is a choice. No, it wasn't. So,
if I may ask before you go any further, so how did you, if you lived in a small town, how did you meet these guys in the first place? Especially back then.
And how do you keep it quiet?
Yeah. What was the? I'm trying to remember the frickin' web connection. Connection.com or org was that old gay dating platform that was kind of in the dark woods of the internet.
Okay.
And, there were a couple guys that was like, go to the county fair, and one of the guys was like a jock, and we're like showing. I don't know. I think I was showing pigs or something, and he was this. All the women were just ooh and he saw me, and he's like hanging around, just like trying to get to know me and stuff. And I'm like, well, yeah, I got a crush on the guy. I mean, shit, he's hot, and so.
And he's showing pigs. I mean, how can you go wrong?
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, country boys, tight Wranglers, all those things. And, one thing led to another. And I think like we were under the bleachers or something fooling around. And I was like, oh, okay.
Okay.
But, and then finally it got to the point where it was like, I hid all this and I feel like I'm lying to my family. So I finally went to my aunt, who I always considered to be a very open-minded person. And I was like in tears. And I was just like, finally let it out. And I said, I'm gay. And she's like, oh, honey, we knew.
Who was
my
we?
entire family.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was like, oh. So I finally told my family, and they're like, yeah, we know. We know. So I'm like, well, this giant weight had been lifted. So I had this really close friend growing up, and we'd been friends since kindergarten. I mean, we're just basically family.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had an attraction to him, but, you know, he's just my buddy. And so I was like, well, he needs to know. So I told him, and his response was, get the hell away from me or I will hang you from a tree. So back in the closet I went. I dropped out of high school and moved away. Went to Idaho, met a guy there. We were in a relationship for, I don't know, a year. None of his family knew he was gay.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was so excited about this relationship that I overstepped my boundaries and ended up telling his mom that we were in a relationship. Now, she's like devout Catholic. She flips her shit. He finds out from her, and he flips his shit, kicks me out. So back to Oregon I came because I didn't have anywhere else to go.
Mm.
So I came back home, and that was basically it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, I don't want anything to do with this lifestyle. I am not gay. I will change, I'll tell everybody that this was just a giant lie, and so I did. I told everybody it was a joke. Including
your family, including your aunt.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I told all of them it was a giant lie, that I lied to everybody, that I'm not really gay, that, it was a bet. Somebody paid me money to come out and tell everybody I was. And they basically looked at me like, no, now you're lying. And so in 2009, I went to a Chinese restaurant and I walked out of the bathroom and I saw this woman. And, I asked her, I said, would you mind having lunch with me? I just walked down and she said, yeah. And so she got kicked out of her parents' house because she got a cell phone. And her family is extremely religious. So they believe this was like a gateway for her to like find the real world or whatever. And so
are they Mennonite or something? Or is it just...
No, they are Baptist.
Okay. All right.
And so, their opinion was that women are not to have employment outside of the home. Their job is to have children, not to wear any revealing clothing, no education. And so these are all red flags that I totally ignored because she had said that she got away from that, didn't want anything to do with it.
Right.
And we met in January, and we were pregnant with our first child and married by August. So she was pregnant at the wedding. Anyway, her parents, when they found out we were living together before we were married, they, had the church come and write letters and send hate mail to the apartment and said that we were she was excommunicated, and they didn't even come to our wedding. Her parents didn't even come to our wedding.
You sort of succeeded in pushing the sexual draw to men, just kind of pushing it aside.
Oh, I killed it.
Wow.
And did you have any help of somebody doing that, or did you do it all yourself?
She knew. So before we even got married, I told her, I have been with men. You need to know I have been with men and that I find men attractive.
Okay.
And her response was, well, we'll just pray it away. You just pray it away. She's like, it's like being an alcoholic. You can have those desires to drink, but you can control them and not act on them.
Right.
And so I believed it. I had somebody that was very close to me that was almost like a mother. And she, during my marriage, she was, she's very religious, and she kept me in track. I'd go to her and say, I'm having these feelings towards men. My marriage is on the rocks. And she'd do the same thing. You just got to lean into God more. You got to pray more. You got to. And, when it finally came down to it, and she said that this was a choice, I kind of lost it. And I said, who in the hell in their right mind would choose this shit?
Right.
Yeah.
With all the baggage and the crap and the threats and even the murder that happens, who would choose this? Why would anybody want to choose that?
You have just, by the way, alighted upon the most basic logic flaw in homophobia that exists. It's like really, why would we want to do this when it would be so much easier not to do this? I'm totally with you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was married for 9 years. We were together for 10. And I killed all the feelings because basically at the point I was like, I made vows. I made a promise. I'm going to stick this out, whatever the cost. And the cost ended up being abuse. She was so unhappy because I wasn't fully into this marriage. I was fully into being a father, but even I was avoiding my children to avoid her. And so it just got strained. And so she was like, well, why can't you be like so-and-so? And I remember
why can't you be like so-and-so because of what? In what form? What was...
She was very materialistic. So basically what it came down to is why can't you be like so-and-so's husband that brings in more income?
So
why...
So not particularly...
why can't you take us on vacations? Why can't you buy us nice things? It's like...
Right. So not particularly anything that was tied to the sexuality element, just a marriage that was otherwise not going well.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. We finally decided to separate because things had gone... They had gotten to the point where the kids, when they heard either one of us raise our voice, they ran upstairs and hid in their rooms.
Oh.
And so I finally told her, I said, look, we can't do this together. So we need to separate. And she walked in front of me while I was saying this, while I was sitting on the couch, and she looks dead square at me and she says, I would rather these kids were dead than you be their father. Yeah.
Okay.
So we separated. I found her a house in town. She moved.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we started talking again, just making light conversation. She didn't make any changes. She was still angry and bitter. And,
what happened with the kids at that moment during the separation?
They went with her.
Okay.
Cause I was working full time. So they went with her and then I would see them. I'd go visit them.
Right.
So while she was separated, she met this man, who basically preyed on her vulnerability.
Mm.
She said, I cut it off. We're not talking anymore. Yada, yada, yada. I still love you. I want to work through things. And I said, okay, I forgive you. I said, but we need to get into counseling if we're going to stick through this. And so I set up counseling appointments. She never showed up. And then come to find out she was still seeing the guy.
Right.
And so, she filed for divorce. We divorced. This all came down, and finally got through it all, did all the things they needed done. Finished with all my classes, got the kids, got my own place, got all set up, and started seeing the kids more. And then the happier I got, the angrier she got.
Yeah. Right.
So then it started being, let's use the kids against their dad, because that's all I have right now to control him with.
Forgive me for prying, but it's a prying kind of podcast.
Do you want to know if I was seeing men?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to know: were you seeing any men? Like, was there that kind of I'm out of this marriage? I need to have a life, have some fun. Did any of that happen, or were you still in that mindset?
Oh. In the beginning, no, I didn't see anybody because I knew I was in a state of depression about all the events that took place, and I wasn't going to be able to enjoy any kind of interaction with anybody. Mm-hmm. And so I basically hid off to myself to try to get through my shit.
Right.
Finally went and saw a therapist. I said, I need something to get me through this because I'm not doing well.
Right.
So I was put on antidepressant for a while to kind of get over the hump.
And this therapist, good. Now this is important too. This therapist was nearby, was where you lived?
Yes.
And was this therapist an open-minded, progressive, I don't know what, or were you understand my question? Like, how helpful could they be addressing the bigger questions?
The therapist I had during the beginnings of divorce was the same therapist that I had when I was in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he was the one I went to about being gay. He was a month away from retiring when I started seeing him again. And so he finally retired, and he's like, look, I'm going to, with your permission, I want to get you into somebody else. There's a younger guy that's coming in, and he's a therapist, and he wants to help people. And he's trying to build a rapport with, locals and stuff. And I said, no, absolutely. I'm all open for, seeing somebody new or talking to somebody new. And so we did, and set up a session. Our first session, I remember walking in, sitting down, and he's like, so what's up? And I finally told him, I said, I'm gay, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to be.
Right.
And he's like, well, who the fuck knows how to be anything? And I was like, oh, okay.
That's wise. That's a wise statement. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And he's like, who? He's like, you find me somebody who's perfected life, and he's like, and I'll quit my job. And we just built up this huge friendship,
right.
And it was just like somebody to finally talk to, and he's like, dude, just be happy. Fuck everybody else. Be happy. And I finally got to the point where it's like, you're right. I don't care. So after I started seeing him for a while, then it was like, you know what? I am going to go date guys. I'm going to. And so I did. And I went out and I dated a really nice guy for a while. But I was so scared to death of my ex-wife ever finding out. And so I dumped him. And so then I went back to dating women.
Oh.
To make my ex-wife happy. She didn't know about me dating men. But when she found out I was dating women, she sends me all these messages saying, you're not allowed to date this person until I meet them and approve of them and all.
That's the job. That's the job of your mother, not your ex-wife. Come on now.
Yeah, exactly.
So during this whole time, how were the kids with you?
They were upset. Now, I will admit this, and I think anybody who is going through a divorce or a separation needs to hear it, because a lot of the time we get so caught up in our own emotions that we fail to see how we can negatively affect our children. And the fact of the matter is, it's you divorced or you left your spouse. Your kids didn't choose that. And so with me in the beginning, I was so upset about the reputation of the man I had heard that she was dating that when I got my kids, when I picked them up, I would sit there and ask them a ton of questions about what was going on at mom's house. Don't do that. A lot of people have to understand, unless there's an absolute threat to their well-being and their lives, you need to butt out. If you were equally able to care and love those children together, you need to understand that the other parent can do the same thing without you.
Right.
And that took a long time for me to realize until finally my oldest said, Dad, I'm done being questioned.
Yeah.
And it was like, God, I'm because the kids started to not want to come visit me. They wanted to stay with their mom.
Right.
And I had my blinders on, and I couldn't, well, I'm doing everything right. I want to know what's going on. I just want to help you. And it was like the light bulb came on. I was like, no, you aren't spending time with your kids. You're spending time worrying about what she's doing.
Right.
And if you want the same respect, you have to give that respect. So I finally just said, you know what? Enough's enough. When I have the kids, it's the kids and I.
Right.
And then the relationship just blossomed. They just wanted to come see me more, spend more time together because it was just them and me, just being, parent and children.
I assume that at the end she found out about you dating other men?
So that's, yeah. Down the road, so I finally met my partner, and there wasn't one single ounce of hesitation about telling my family and coming back out and coming clean and being who I was when I met him.
Right. It's the pressure that says if you're going to go through this horrible thing of telling everybody you're gay, it has to work out well. It can't be bad gay. It has to be good gay. I know. It's understood. And I think that the pressure for you on that same subject is a lot higher than it is for a lot of other gay men who live in areas where
I can totally relate.
There are tons of gays.
I'm not one to stereotype or anything, but there was a lot of gays that were in the eras of me trying to navigate this that made it to where it was like, God, if that's what it is, I don't want it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it was the overly perversion and stuff. And I had kids at that time. I mean, if I was a young teen, it's like, well, hell,
Yeah.
why not? Go party, free love.
So
But then it was my kids.
right. So your wife found out, and then what
I
happened?
told her.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up getting in a relationship. So I was like, you know what? Enough. I'm not going to hide this anymore, and I'm not going to let her control me, and I'm not going to let her be in charge of my happiness. So I messaged her, and I said, the kids are going to end up meeting somebody that I'm in a relationship with, and I want to let you know because we are going to need to talk about it. And she said, okay. And I said, I'm fully willing, you know, I said, they're fully willing to talk to you, get to know you, and everything. And I was kind of testing the waters. And she said, they?
Yeah.
And so I said, yes, you know, and she said, well, how do I get a hold of her? And I said, I never said it was a woman.
Ba, ba,
And
ba.
Yeah. So she said, okay. Kind of got to the point where it's like everything you say and do can be used against you in the court of law. I use that still to this day. Anytime we talk.
Got it.
Right.
So I gave her all the information, and she said, this is going to break our kids' hearts, but okay. And I responded back, and I said, actually, if we come at it from a place of love and compassion and not condemnation, they will be just fine. And then I think it was the next night at like 11:30 at night, I get a message, and it says, I'm very concerned about the fact that you are going to tell our children that you're a faggot.
No.
And that's the message that you guys saw that I
Yes.
posted,
Yeah.
where she dotted out faggot. Couldn't even spell it right. And it's like, are you really that cowardly that you can't even just come right out and say it? You have to blank it out because you know it's derogatory? I mean, I didn't really understand it. And I said, excuse me? And she said, our children attend a private Christian school. Do you know how humiliating this is going to be for them? And I should have just ignored it, but I ended up saying probably no more than the fact that their mother ran off while she was still married and had an affair with a married man.
Well, I think touche is in order, first of all. How old were your kids at this point?
This was a month ago. My oldest boy is 9.
Okay.
And my daughter is 7.
Okay.
And my youngest boy is going to be 4 in August.
Got it. Thank you.
Daniel ended up moving here to Oregon from Kansas. And, you know, I told him, I said, here's the deal. I said, don't worry about anything she says, you know.
Right.
And I said, but I have 3 children I have to look out for. I want you to just build a friendship with them first, and then we can tell them
Right.
that we're in a relationship. That didn't go too well. And it wasn't his fault, and it wasn't my fault. We were hanging out, and my oldest is very tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
So he asked Danny if he could look at his iPhone watch. And I've never had an iPhone watch. I've got an iPhone, but I've never had a watch. So he's playing with this, and he walks up to me, and he shows me the watch, and on the watch is a screensaver that Danny and I made that was just a picture of us side by side, and underneath it said, we are family.
Uh-huh.
And my son walks up to me, shows me this picture, and he says, awkward. And I was dumb. I was just, my heart sank. I was like, oh, God. How do I even?
No.
Well, I said, we need to go in the bathroom and talk.
Got it. That's the best place
So we
to have
went-
these conversations anyway, in the bathroom.
Yeah. So we went in, and he sat down on the edge of the tub, and I sat on the stool. And I told him, I said, you know, I believe in God, but I don't believe that God would hate anybody or send them to hell for who they love if they still love God. You know, and the kids were raised Christian, so I'm trying to, you know, express this to them on that level.
Right.
And my daughter and my youngest are not at the age where I feel like I can tell them and not have them really grasp it. And, you know, my oldest boy and my daughter are going to be 10 and 8 in this month. So he's always been very smart and he knows what's going on before I even tell him. And so I look at him and I said, so what if I told you that Danny and I are in a relationship? And he looks at me and I was like, oh God, here we go. Here come the questions. And I said, what would you say if Danny and I were in a relationship? And he said, I think that's just fine. He treats us really nice and he loves you.
Oh, it's good stuff, man.
And I bawled. I just
did.
I just grabbed him and I held him and I was like, you know what? That's love. That's what, I mean, these kids are going to be fine. And so I told him, I said, okay, I don't want you to lie, but I do not want you to tell your brother and sister until it's, we've gotten to a point where they would understand because they won't right now. Right. And he understood.
Wow.
But the kids just instantly gravitated to him. They love him. They hang all over him. They play and they talk. And he's the same height as my 9-year-old, which is kind of funny. But it was an instant connection, this instant bond. And that's when it was like, you know what? When things fall into place, you just know it. You just know. Right. And my family, I told them, I told my mother, before Danny got here that we were together.
Right.
And she looked at me and she's like, it's about damn time.
Oh, don't you hate it when your mother is right? Ugh.
Oh, I despise it.
It's the worst.
It is. It's a slap in the face. It's like, yeah, I know. You don't have to rub it in my face. But what it came down to is just the fact that she finally just looked at me and she said, this is exactly why I did not. She said, your girlfriends that you brought to visit probably all think I'm a raving bitch because she said, I didn't want to get attached to these women, and then know in my heart you're duping them. You are duping them.
Right.
And you're going to break their hearts. And I can't get attached to somebody and then have you finally one day come to terms again, maybe even years down the road after you've married them and had another life, and come clean.
Wow.
And she was absolutely right. She was absolutely right. And
send your mom our love. Seriously, she's amazing.
But tell her that she's got to be wrong about some other things. I mean, she can't get it all right all the time.
Oh, she's wrong. I mean, yeah, she's wrong about love.
Okay, good. But good.
Yeah, but I don't ever tell her that.
Of course not. Well, she may, you may want her to listen to this.
I think we all put, narrate this story in our mind of how things are going to go. And we always go to the worst possible scenario before we could think of, it's kind of like what if this happens or what if this happens? And instead of looking at it and being like, well, what if this happens?
Right.
You have to look at it from a different aspect. And I find, I had never come out on social media. I had never told anybody about my private life. And then I finally just did. I finally just posted it and said, here I am. This is me. I'm happy. And you can either choose to stay here and be happy with me or for me, or you don't have to. Right. I'm not going to force you.
We are definitely happy for you.
Well, thank you guys. And I'm happy for you guys too. I'm happy that I found you.
Kate, yeah. Kate, thank you so much for sharing the story with us. It's really inspiring. And we'll definitely keep in touch to see how it's going.
Yeah, and listen, you and your boyfriend got to schlep out to Los Angeles. Trust us. Come visit.
Absolutely.
All right.
Cade, thanks again.
Thank you. All right, we're coming back from the interview with Cade. It's me, Jan, and Alex is with me.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
And the Gay Dads podcast, Daddy Squared. I have to say, the hero of the story, except from Cade himself, is his mom. He has an amazing mom. And, the whole family is amazing. I think that what was really clear to me in the whole story, and a little bit sad, is that it was more self-homophobia of Cade rather than his family's.
Well, and the environment. I mean, I actually thought that too. I was so fascinated by how he had parents who from the outset, from early on, were supportive of him as a gay man, or mostly supportive of him as a gay man.
The whole family is aunt too.
But the community that surrounded all of them made him feel like he could not live his life that way. And
this is why he came out and came back in.
Yes.
And this is actually, I think it's demonstrates the struggle. Like, I want to do it, I can't. I can't. And I think that the key point is that seeing the right therapist, like in the minute he got into the right therapist who was not a Christian extremist, right? And a regular therapy. So I think that's the point where things have started to change for him. And I want to highlight that as well.
In his case, yes, I feel like it's really important. Jan is very, very pro therapy, and so am I. But I want to really make sure that everybody understands we're not suggesting you can't do this and do this right without therapy.
Yeah.
Of course you can. You need the support of friends. You need the support of a community. But therapy is one way of arriving where you need to get in your life. It's certainly not the only one.
Yeah, I think that therapy is more about the self-acceptance part. It can't control other people, but it can control the way you feel about you.
Sure.
And
it certainly
understanding
assists.
who you are. That's all therapy is. It's just study of self. That's how
Agreed.
I see it. Another thing is the thing with the unsupportive wife, which basically abused him, right?
Yeah.
He was afraid of her reaction. It was not anticipated.
Yeah.
So the wife plays a key role for these men.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's remind me that last night we watched Cougar Town. One of the episodes that we watched, they talk about how people who are considered lucky are people who not only marry the person they love, but also marry their best friend.
Yes.
So I think it's a very key important, because if you're really friends with your wife, maybe there is a way to come to a point where everything's going to turn out fine for the both of you as co-parenting, as family. And I think this is the next interview that we're going to come. What's wrong?
In this first interview, we're seeing an example of a straight marriage, or a marriage to a woman, where when it came apart, the ex-wife was not supportive
And
at
it's
all.
still not.
But you know what? I feel like it's important for us to recognize something here. There is a lot of suffering that goes around when people go through their lives in the closet, and the suffering is not exclusively Cade's. So, you know what? Maybe it'll get me in some trouble, but I don't know this woman. I don't know what her life situation really is, but I have a hard time thoroughly blaming her for the sense of betrayal and the sense of embarrassment and shame and everything else that she has gone through. So I would give her a little bit of latitude to recognize what she has gone through as well. This is a lot of damage was done.
All right. I'm totally Team Cade here. I'm sorry,
Of course,
but
I'm team.
listen,
Wait. I'm Team Cade too, but we have to recognize that there's a lot of collateral damage that occurs around people who live their lives in the closet.
I will give you that. I will give you that. The fact that he said that the more happier he got, the angrier she got. I think the anger she had of course baggage and hurt behind it.
Yes.
It's not just anger, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But she has to go and take care of it herself. It's not Kate's problem.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely
so
right.
If she wants to self-accept herself, she should go to therapy. Anyway, the next story we're gonna hear is a different reaction for the wife. Why are you making this face?
I think that you're being a little bit dismissive of the pain that occurs to a person who is largely at the beginning innocent, gets into a marriage.
She wasn't.
I've seen Cade. He's a fine-looking man.
Listen.
And you're like, here it is. I'm going to live my life, this idyllic life with this man. And
Alex,
blah, blah,
she
blah.
knew from the get-go that he's gay. He told her.
Okay,
It's not like it wasn't a surprise.
Well,
it's not
right.
like Philip Schofield when it was a surprise.
Look, you and I live in a different world than the very, very Christian community that they both grew up in, where despite the fact that you have homosexual thoughts or whatever that terminology is, you can say, but I'm committed to living a life of blah, blah, blah. I agree it's absurd, but I'm not going to blame a young woman for that. I'm not.
All right. The next story that we're going to hear. Am I too mean?
You're so mean. It's what I love about you.
The next story we're gonna hear is a different story as far as the wife is concerned. So here we have Josh from Canada who just recently came out, and his wife, who is his best friend, was utterly supportive.
That is Squared, the Gay Dad podcast with Alex Megan and Jan Megan.
Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm still recovering from daylight savings time, losing that hour, but overall, I can't complain.
I was almost afraid you were saying the corona.
No, don't say the coronavirus. No.
Yeah,
recovery.
right.
So we're here to talk about your story, and
Yes.
you recently came out.
Yes, I did. So I kind of came out in phases. Like I most recently, at the beginning of beginning of February, came out to my work, and then I came out on Facebook, I think about like a week and a half ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago.
Wow, this is fresh.
Totally fresh.
Very fresh, totally fresh, yes.
So tell us, when did you actually realize you were gay? Before you got married to a woman or after?
So I knew that I was gay from when I was like 5 years old. But I mean, I got the message very consistently in what I now kind of refer to as my cult fundamentalist environment that I grew up in. That it was wrong to be gay, and it was wrong, or even if it wasn't wrong to be gay, it was wrong to ever act on those feelings, which to me I took to mean the same thing. But I knew I was gay from a very young age. Like I said, I think I was about 5 when I knew.
And so you were 5 when you knew, and then at some point you started dating girls. I'm making this up as if I know, leading the witness, if you will.
Yeah, I only ever dated one person, which was my wife.
Wow.
And so, yeah, like I never was on the dating scene. Like I never had an interest in women at all.
Right.
But, I thought it was sort of the only option or the only acceptable option. And so my ex actually knew that I was gay before we had gotten engaged. And so from my perspective, it was, that she was willing to accept me sort of with my flaws and, willing to love me in spite of it kind of a thing. And so that's sort of when, or in and around the time when I started doing some reparation therapy. And then that was a whole other experience in and of itself.
She was also very devout of the same community or not?
I would say, yeah, she was of a similar community. But I mean, her perspective on homosexuality, I'm never able to clearly articulate it. So she asked me, even when I'm talking to my friends or family, not to really say her perspective on it because it's hard for me to really understand or replicate. But I will say that her knowing me now versus her knowing me while we were together, she said that her understanding of homosexuality has evolved for sure.
Understood.
And, certainly that's the case for me as well. And for more obvious reasons, because I used to think horrible things about myself. I used to think I was an abomination. And I used to think if people really knew who I was deep down, they wouldn't love me or they wouldn't like me.
Sure.
And unfortunately, in part of my coming out process, some family members seem to be sort of treating me that way. So, my fear wasn't totally out of the realm of what was actually possible.
I'm sensing from you that you had the double whammy of both the fear of the response of others and also a sense of shame about who you were.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I'm still in the process of, discussing this with my counselor, and I'm debating going into trauma therapy because I felt immense shame over who I was. And, that really defined a large part of my relationship with my ex-spouse, because every major decision that would come up or anything that had any major consequence in our life, from my perspective, I felt I was always going to relent because who I was a bad person.
Right. And
who I was illegitimate. So clearly, this person who's so wonderful and willing to accept me and love me for who I am, they're the sort of, quote unquote, holy one. And so what they want should really take precedent over what I want. And
Right.
so, not that I did that perfectly. I actually held a lot of resentment over my spouse because of that. And that certainly wasn't her fault. But that's sort of the consequence of growing up with shame and growing up believing that who you are is so bad and so wrong.
How are you now, you and your ex?
We're actually like best friends. So I was discussing with some people in my office just yesterday. I'm like, I don't know how to refer to her because like ex has such a negative connotation, and she really is my best friend still. And so, we call each other co-parents, and, based on the conversation I had with my team yesterday, they're like, just call her your best friend. And if people ask questions about it, if you want to spend the time and elaborate on the whole story, go for it. But you're not obligated to. I'm gay and I have 2 kids with my best friend.
Right.
That's kind of the short, quick version of it.
That's really amazing. So how did you become best friend?
Well, yeah, let's back up for a second. So you guys got married, and at some point you started to determine that this was not going to be sustainable. How?
I think it was easier to manage in the beginning because I was still young and impressionable, and Lauren, again, so she knew that I was gay before we got engaged. But I think over time, all of those decisions where I would sort of relent and, and thinking deep down that I'm relenting because I'm a bad person and what I want is illegitimate. And so it sort of came to a head after we had a kid where I'm giving up already, from my perspective, everything. And now I have to give more. And it was too much for me. It's too much for a person to do. I don't think that people should have to give up what I had to give up. Right. And so that ultimately led to us seeing a psychologist or a counselor. And this counselor was the first person to tell me that being gay wasn't bad and wasn't shameful. And for some reason it resonated, and I was able to process quickly that it was okay to be gay and to, act in ways that gay people want to act. And with that, and at the same time, almost in tandem, this huge rage and anger emerged in me from the Christian community that I grew up in and how fundamentalist and ignorant they are. And so I'm still dealing with the consequences of that. I don't know exactly how to reconcile it, but like I said, I'm probably going to start some type of trauma therapy in the near future, because I've talked to a few other guys who are in my same situation, and they said that that's been helpful for them.
Right. And so I want to know more about the relationship between you and your wife, because I think I wish that, the way you talk about her, I wish that all people who come out after being married to a woman would feel like that. So How did it came about? Like, how did she receive it so
I think how we're still able to have such a positive relationship with each other. And so basically once it came to a head and we kind of, I acknowledged that it wasn't bad to be shameful, it wasn't bad to be gay, or it wasn't shameful to be gay. We'd had a really hard conversation that it's not fair to me to have to sort of be in this relationship, because intimacy was an issue for us for obvious reasons. And, I always felt like it was because I was a bad person. And so, the breakup for me was emotional, but on a very different level than it was for Lauren. And, from her perspective, from my perspective of what she went through, I think the reason that she's still able to be friends with me and certainly why I'm still able to be friends with her is because we never hid anything from each other. She knew everything from the get-go. I never lived a double life. I never cheated on her, and so there was no surprises, I guess.
No sense of betrayal or something like that.
Right. Yeah, no sense of betrayal, no surprises. She kind of, she kind of told me before, earlier in our marriage that, well, why don't you just sort of leave me for a man? Isn't that what you want? And at the time, because I had been led to believe that homosexuality is a perversion and it's exclusively sexual, I'm like, well, that's not what I want. Like, I would never want to be with a man, because they said the ideas that are put into your head from fundamentalist Christians, it's just sexual. Right. And so hindsight's 2020. Now I realize it's not, like, that's so not all of it. And so again, she had exposure through that whole process. And so I think because we worked together through that, I think that's why we're able to be at the place that we're at now. And I'm not going to say it's super easy where we're at now. I think it's definitely a lot better that we're at least on really positive terms, but it's still hard because she is in a place where, she's going to want to go one way with her life and I'm going to want to go one way with my life. And we have 2 kids. So we're trying to do the best we can to make it work. And fortunately, the reason we started dating in the first place is we were kind of best friends before. And so we have a lot of similarities. And so those similarities are still a real big strength in our current relationship.
Right. So just for a little bit of data, how old were you when you guys got married and how long were you guys together?
So 23 when we got married, and last July would have been 8 years, but we'd really separated last June.
Got it. So during that time, I mean, my God, 23, 25, 27 years old, you're married, and how shall I put this? You know, a man has certain needs. And I guess my question is, do you feel like what had happened is you had so successfully been convinced by, you know, your upbringing and to some extent by yourself of the perversion that it represented, et cetera, that on a day-to-day basis you just didn't feel the desperation of, and I'm talking here sexually, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know,
of
totally.
Sexually not having that kind of life?
Yeah, I mean, I was totally convinced that it was a perversion, like 110%, because those are the lies that I was fed from such an early age. So, you know, sometimes I'm asked, well, how were you able to maintain an erection or get an erection and have sex with your spouse? And really, that's conditioning. I mean, if you look at Pavlov's dogs, they were able to salivate on command of a bell ringing when there was no food present because they were classically conditioned. And so I don't actually know the psychology behind it, but I think that's a similar psychology for how that happened with my spouse.
Right.
And at the same time and in tandem, I had a huge porn addiction. And so that was something that was, a struggle for me during those years.
And that was gay porn.
Of course, yeah.
Well, no. I'm asking because I actually think that's really important, right? You were engaged in, you know, homosexual fantasy. You had not successfully shut this part of your humanity down completely.
I don't think that you can. Like, I mean, I tried. Like,
right.
You know, I got put on medication to decrease my libido. And, you know, nothing worked. And it makes sense because, you know what, honestly, since accepting that it's not shameful or bad, I've actually, and not that I think looking at porn is bad at all, but I haven't done it at all, and I haven't wanted to, and I haven't needed to. And it's not because I'm also out there, you know, fucking a bunch of guys. It's because I'm happy with who I am. And it's interesting, I think, and I don't know, again, what the psychology is behind it, but I think there's some kind of sexual expression of shame that happens in people that I think I was subjected to. And now that I'm no longer subjected to that, I feel very in control of who I am and what I do.
So is that what they're doing in the conversion therapy? They put you on medication?
Well, wait, were you actually in conversion
therapy? He said
therapy?
that he was.
Well, he said he was considering it. I just wanted to check.
So I volunteered myself for different therapies that were focused on dealing with what I labeled at the time as an unwanted homosexual attraction.
Right.
I think you can consider conversion therapy it's kind of an umbrella term for a bunch of different therapy that you can modify your sexuality. So that's how I use that term. So I started voluntarily when I was in my early 20s, I think around 20 years old. And that was also a very fucked up community because, like, the first guy that I ever saw, he actually came on to me in session, and he was the one saying, you know, that these are bad feelings and, you know, trying to deal with these. And then he came on to me. And so then I had to, you know, put an end, like, we never did anything. And I had to, at 20 years old, you know, having this super confusing time of my life, and I had to put a stop to that session. And then I found an online group called Setting Captives Free. And so then I was engaging with different online therapists, is what they called themselves. I highly doubt they're actually therapists.
Right.
And, you know, they would tell me basically, if you ever act on those feelings, you're on the road to becoming a pedophile. Right. And so that's what I was convinced would happen. I'd never had any attraction towards that population whatsoever, but I was terrified that could eventually happen. And so, again, further need for me to suppress who I am. You know, hence the anger, because at the same time, the pastors in my church are making the same associations. They're saying, you know, the alcoholic, the pedophile, the homosexual, the sinner. Right. Like, they're putting us in the same category. And yes, there's certain Christians who feel that, you know, you as a person are still just as loved, but you can never act on those feelings because they're bad.
Right.
And I'm basically trying to tell them, well, it's the same thing. If you think that me acting on those feelings is bad, but having them in the first place is not bad, really the consequence for me is the same. Because how can I accept and love who I am fully if a huge part of me is my sexuality and I'm never allowed to express that? So after my relationship with Lauren, I got into a relationship with a man who is my boyfriend, and he's the most wonderful man I've ever met in my life. And that was the first time that I experienced love and real intimacy. And so that was really interesting for me because those were the things that my ex had always asked me for, and I just didn't understand why I couldn't be that for her. Because I didn't think it was love based. I thought it was a deviancy in me.
So just make sure that he doesn't listen to the podcast, because then he'll get a big head. Don't praise, never praise your boyfriend. Don't do that. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So how?
No, I couldn't not. He's such a wonderful guy, and I still feel that way. But we ended our relationship because I needed to just be me. Because the other thing is, when you're in a relationship like the one that I was in before, you give up so much of yourself. I don't think I was in a healthy space to be in another long-term relationship. And so we had to end it. It came to a head as well because I just need to be me. And so I'm single intentionally right now because I'm resetting all of myself, and I'm trying to, sort through some of the damage that I've been subjected to.
How was Lauren with that relationship, if I may ask?
So that was interesting because she was actually wonderful. So when we first broke up, it was extremely, extremely hard. I mean, you could cut the tension in the room with a knife. It was so thick. But she was able to process what was going on pretty quickly because, again, she'd already known sort of before because she'd seen everything that I've been through, what this meant for me. And she knew that I'd tried everything. And so, it was really hard to go through the breakup, but she was in a space within a few weeks of being way more positive at the outlook of it. And so it's funny because she and my boyfriend at the time would even go out to lunch together without me because they got along really well. And he had a son. And so sometimes, the three of us, so me, my best friend / co-parent, and my boyfriend will go to the movies with our combined 3 kids. And I'm like, wow, we look like the most millennial family of all time.
Amazing. And so how old are your kids?
So I have a 2.5-year-old, and then I have a 2.5-month-old.
Oh, super.
And so we really broke up about a week or around the same time that we found out that Lauren was expecting our second child.
Wow. So
yeah, like I said, it's all fucked up.
So your kids.
But one of the good things about it, honestly, and this is one of the areas that I've had to really focus on, is I love my kids like crazy. And, a lot of gay dads will never get the opportunity to be biological parents. And so, I try to check myself and remind myself of that often while I'm going through the pain points of dealing with this trauma. And so, that's one of the really positive things about it. And, Lauren wanted kids. She wanted 2 kids. So who's to say she wouldn't have been a surrogate mom anyways if we were still best friends? I don't know. But it ended up, that part of it is a positive.
Did you plan anything moving forward about the co-parenting?
We're still trying to figure that out. It's still, for me, it still feels very fresh. Like we just had a baby 2.5 months ago. We've discussed things like building a house with 2 masters or buying, 2 side-by-side duplexes with the kids' room shared in the middle. So that's right lovely. Now it's kind of convenient. Like our house had a basement suite when we bought it. And so we'd further gone through the process of suiting it. And so I sleep downstairs, but even though I have a separate kitchen down there, really we all eat together and like we all still get along really well. So there's no need for us to really make that separation yet. Because again, we're still friends. We want to do this for our kids and we still like talking to each other. We're still friends. So it's, that environment makes a lot of my family and or maybe not my family so much, but certainly Lauren's family uncomfortable. There was members of her family that really thought that Lauren should just take the kids and run, and
because you're being
that we should hate each other and that we shouldn't be getting along anymore because we've gone through the separation process, and so they think it's really weird. And I can see, based on traditional standards, yeah, it definitely looks different. But from my perspective, it doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel like it feels like there's an air of past trauma. But there's nothing strange about it from my perspective.
When you think about the environment that your children will grow up in, are you at all concerned about what messages that they will be exposed to, not from your ex and from you, but about other people around them?
In my perspective is that even those fundamentalist Christian views seem to be evolving and changing now. And I feel like I'm more exposed to that the more people that I talk to outside of that original community. And so what I used to think was the world at large, to me now seems like a very small minority, thankfully. And so I'm not overly concerned about that. I think if my kids know that they're loved for who they are and we tell them that, I think that's going to trump any sort of lies that they'll be fed from any fundamentalists about if their dad is a bad person, or if they themselves end up being gay, that they're bad people for some reason. I think that love will be able to sort of wash over that.
Oh man, from your mouth to God's and everybody else's ears.
To the Christian God.
Everybody's
God.
Thank you so much. This was
Josh, it was really great.
Wonderful to
Do you
hear
have,
this story.
by the way, any, like, if somebody who is now in your situation that you were before you came out, do you have anything to say to them?
Oh, not without crying.
Oh no, we want crying.
I think it's not shameful, it's not wrong, and it's also not just about lust and sex like the Christian community has you believe it is. It's about life and living and being who you are, and at least giving yourself an opportunity to find real love. I mean, a famous quote from, I don't remember who said it, but it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Well, if you're in that situation, you really aren't loving and you don't know what that experience is like. And it is fucking mind-blowing and life-changing. And, both loving yourself, accepting yourself for who you are, and then having the opportunity or the at least chance to be in love with someone is worth every consequence.
That's
amazing.
Wonderful. Josh,
thank you so much
for your time.
Tell Lauren we
story.
love her.
Okay, I'll tell her that. Thank you, guys.
All right, be
right.
well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Okay, bye-bye.
That is squared.
So we're back from the interview with Josh, and I have to tell you, it's sort of like a modern Cinderella story. It's like a modern twist on romance and a happy ending. Because though this couple are not together, this man and woman are not together anymore, they may actually end up living happily ever after,
totally.
and it's beautiful.
Lauren is amazing, and I don't know, like what to say about her. Like so we talked about the pain. So imagine how much pain she was in when she found out, or when she also knew from the beginning, but when she accepted it. So it's a long way for her, and to become friends and understand it and accept it. That's really deserve a Daddy Squared medal.
Oh my God, do we give out medals now? That's so great.
I don't know.
Look,
Kate's mom will get one.
Actually, what we should totally do is we should make medals so that every gay dad can walk around when he doesn't have his kids with him. Look, I'm a gay father. You should be proud of me. But listen, I also want to point out that though both of there are two interviews are so different from each other, they do have one thing in common, which I think is
a couple of things in common.
Well, one thing for sure I wanted to point out that I think is probably very unusual, which is that they both were open with their fiance or whoever it was before they got married. I suspect that 98% of gay men who get married to women do not tell their betrothed ahead of time that they are gay or that they have gay thoughts or any of that kind of stuff, and they live their lives in complete secrecy. And I think that this is a really fascinating
surprising twist.
Yeah.
One other commonality is the role of religion in these both of these stories. So not only they have their own fear and shame, it was fed up by the religious community.
Right, although one can wonder whether you'd have your own fear and shame in the first place were it not for religion. I mean, their religion, Jan, yours, and my religion. There are very few religions that don't fuck the homosexual community pretty decently.
Well, my current religion doesn't fuck.
Listen, Kylie Minogue is not a religion. Okay, she's a lady.
She's a pop goddess.
Oh, good God. Cher is a religion.
Download season 3 cheat sheet now at daddysqr.com with some exclusive articles and resources that related to the topic discussed in this season. It's also a good way to connect with all the people that were on the show during the season. If you are on our mailing list, you already received it. But if you're not, so just go on to daddysqr.com and download. It's free.
That is squared.
This is season 3.
Yeah. I can't believe we've done 3 seasons of this. I'm so happy that we've done 3 seasons
and it's
of this.
mostly thanks to all the people who are listening to us. We really, really, really appreciate everything that you write to us and comment. And I don't know, I just love it. And you're up on my wall here, everybody. And before we talk about season 4, which going to happen sometimes later this year, we're having a little bit of a surprise for you.
What's that?
We'll be back in the summer with Daddy Squared around the world. If you are outside of the US and you would like to tell us what it's like to be a gay dad in your country, please contact us at hello@daddysqr.com. Also, any comments and idea for season 4, if you want to share your story, please remember that visibility is the key to normalize.
Totally.
Alex, did you have anything else to say before the thank yous?
Well, as we wind down the end of season 3, in the middle of this,
Do you need a romantic music?
I'm trying to think of what it would be.
I'll start singing in the background.
No, don't sing in the background. As we wind down this season 3 in the middle of this horrible global pandemic, which has, killed a lot of people and also sickened a lot of people and also isolated a lot of people, I want to first of all say thank you to my husband, who I love so much and who is my friend, for being with me in this time and taking care of our children in this time when we're all going nuts. But also I wanted to say that Daddy Squared is about celebrating the idea that gay men have families. They have families by having children. They have families by having close friends, and that we're in a modern age where family can mean so many different things. And I hope that all of you have connections with people that you love that can help you through this time. We all need it and we all deserve it.
That's
and
right.
we wish all the love and health for all of you.
I'm not going to put any music in the background
No,
because
that would be
it's
ridiculous.
just too moving by itself. So Alex, I would like to thank you for bearing up with this.
With which this are we talking about?
The season and the podcast.
Oh, I thought you meant the global pandemic.
So
I love this thing. What
Yeah,
do you
me
mean
too.
bearing up with that? I mean, it's true that because Jan does all of the production,
and Alex is just a diva.
He uses me as a slave. He points at the microphone and says, "Speak now," and things like that. But
And shut up
nonetheless-
now.
Good luck. Good luck with that. That can only be achieved in post-production. But anyway, it is my pleasure and my joy to do
Mine
this
too.
with you.
And I would like to thank everybody that we heard this season. And I feel it's like my family. Like it's a sort of a virtual family. So I want to thank our guest co-hosts this season, Stephen and Spencer and Greg and Braden. Thank you to our sponsor, Love Is Family, and make sure you check it at loveisfamily.com. Thank you to Scott Cruz, Daniel Vandenberg, Jesse Brun-Huran, Tammy Shackley, Stephen Patro, Ken Howard, Etta Late, Julia Dennison, Dr. Courtney Bolton, Tara Saltis, and John Charles de Oliveira Scapatucu from Friends in Adoption, Joe Aaron Reid, Greg Yorgi Girdi, Lenore Shkenazi, Kate Bartlett, and Joshua Pedersen. All of them took part in our season.
I don't think you guys who are listening recognize how amazing it is that my Israeli husband managed to get through that list of names just as successfully as he did, with the exception of
Jean-Charles.
Jean-Charles, who really got screwed up in that pronunciation. That was very good.
Thank you. Guys, we're going to see you very, very soon. Keep in touch. Keep in touch. Do you hear
Please.
me? Keep in touch. Daddy Squared Season 3. This is it.
Much
See you
love.
next.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
If you're thinking about having kids, start your search at loveisfamily.com by ORM Fertility. For over 30 years, ORM Fertility has been at the forefront of fertility services, providing personalized care and helping all family types grow. ORM are honored to be a trusted resource for the gay community on their journey to parenthood and are now sharing all they know with you at loveisfamily.com. ORM's expert team gives gay parents-to-be all the information they need and guides them through their unique fertility journey, providing expertise, education, and support every step of the way. Over 1,000 gay couples and singles from all over the world have started or grown their family with ORM's support and fertility and financial expertise. Find out more at loveisfamily.com, ORM Fertility's online resource for gay dads and LGBTQ+ family building.
Daddy, that's QR.com.